The Miami Hurricanes are 5-0 after a 28-22 win over Florida State. CJ Daniels did the war chant. Michael Irvin got tackled on the sideline. And oh boy, it's a great time to be a Miami Hurricane. Welcome back to another edition of the Teammate Sportscast. I'm Zach Cohen, joined by Liam Hickey and Luca Mucciardi. Luca, it's happy to have you on this week's episode of Teammate Sportscast.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. Thank you, Liam. Excited to be on. I've been behind the scenes once or twice now for you guys, helping out, so it's excited to be in front of the mic this time.
It's going to be a great show. And now, Liam, I want to get right into it. Let's go over this FSU versus Miami game.
So, incredible game by the Hurricanes, winning 28-22 on the road in a hostile Doak environment. I said going into it, it's going to be the hardest game of the season, and it was. Probably harder than it needed to be, especially in that fourth quarter. But I think you have to start with the positives first, and that's going to start with the offense because Miami showed they are one of the most complete teams in the country after that performance on Saturday night. Because when the run game sputtered, something that Miami has been relying on in the past couple games, we saw it against South Florida. We saw it against Florida as well, where they were the more dominant unit on that side against the wide receivers and the running backs. This time, they were floundering. And who stepped up? Carson Beck and these wide receiver groups, and Florida State had no answer. And that just shows that this team can beat you in a multitude of ways, and there really is nothing you can do about it. It's insane how well Carson Beck and these receivers play with Malachi Toney and CJ Daniels.
You talk about the offense. Malachi Toney and CJ Daniels both had 2 touchdowns. Malachi Toney almost had a third, but got called back for a penalty. And a play that really sparked my attention, got me going in that game while I was in the stands was the flea flicker play. And that was caught by Malachi Toney in the end zone.
You know what? I think the biggest play of that game was the second Toney touchdown on a 4th and long, just inside of opposing field position and in Seminole territory. And Mario Cristobal and Shannon Dawson say, you know what, we're just going to go for this. Like, we're away from home. We're down. Like, let's get it. And 4th and 10, complete zone beater, and Toney's open over the middle, and he's able to score. Like, that's the type of plays you need from your playmaker, especially a slot guy like Malachi. And that just sets the tone for the game. You don't look back from there, and then Canes get a big victory up in Tally.
And I admired the spunk that Cristobal showed on those plays early on in that first half. That's not something that he usually does. That was a very uncharacteristic thing of him. That was the second time they went for it on 4th down. They converted twice. Both times led to touchdowns. And so, very good play calling in that opening half by this coaching staff. Carson Beck on the night, 20 for 27, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and a 74% completion rate. He's now jumped to the 8th quarterback in the country with the highest completion rate. And it is all because not only of his excellent play, which we saw tonight, but also because of this offensive line, which has been continuing to do their job once again. They are impregnable. They have allowed for Carson Beck to really work his magic for 3 out of 4 quarters of that game. Get this, 20% pressure rate for Carson Beck on the night. That's 6 out of 30 snaps. That is the worst pressure rate he's had all season. Just speaks volumes to how much time Carson Beck has had in a clean pocket and how dangerous he's been able to do, like you saw with the flea flicker when he's been having that time. But what's unique about this game is that he didn't need that time. He had an average time to throw of 2.24 seconds, so he was getting that ball out quick, and it was working because on those times where he was getting the ball out in less than 2.5 seconds, he was 15 for 21, 128 yards, and 3 passing touchdowns. So they are really complementing each other both ways, where Carson Beck is helping out this O-line by getting the ball out quick, and then this O-line is returning the favor by giving Carson Beck time when he needs it, and that just shows it led to a 28-point performance at Doak.
Yeah, I mean, just you talk about a guy who's got a quick release like a cannon. Carson Beck's got it. He's one of the smartest quarterbacks out there. It's the reason why Miami pursued him so heavily in the transfer portal this year, coming off of that Cam Ward season. And it's just that ability. He gets to the line, he can read a defense quick, and he knows, if my first read is there, he can get it out quick enough. That's one good thing about it. But then, again, you're speaking about how, he really didn't get pressured a lot against Florida State. Florida State only had 7 pressures as a team the entire game. I mean, Ruben Bain had more pressures by himself than Florida State did as an entire defensive unit. That just tells you where this offensive line is. Jordan Brockmeyer's coming off the week where he won ACC Offensive Lineman of the Week for his performance. They're just, it's a good offensive line. They've taken minimal penalties so far this year, a couple here or there, but nothing blatant. Maui Noah's playing like a top 10 draft pick. Markel Bell's doing his job, and Nis Cooper's doing his job. And when you got guys like that in front of you that can win in the trenches on the offensive side of the ball, it makes the quarterback's job so much easier, and it just means, your guys have more time to get open. It's going to work out for a team like Miami. Perfect storm almost going up against a team like Florida State.
And shout out to big old Markel Bell, too. 0 QB pressures on the night. And Tyreek Sapp was actually named to the PFF Team of the Week after his dominant performance in their win against Texas. He was a ghost 2 weeks ago. Didn't have a single impact on the game whatsoever when he was lined up against Markel Bell. And the fact that he played so well against Texas just shows that, hey, this guy was really talented, but this O-line was even better to the fact where they just shut him down completely.
And I want to go back to the receivers, those big guys that Carson Beck targets. We have Alex Bauman and Elijah Lofton. That's something that we've talked about week on and every week for the past few weeks, that they haven't got the tight ends active. And in this game, Elijah Lofton, 3 receptions, 21 yards. Alex Bauman, 3 receptions for 18 yards. Carson Beck's getting these tight ends involved, and that could be the play calling by Shannon Dawson, and they've been doing a great job blocking as well.
Yeah, especially on that play, the touchdown drive where Malachi Tony ended off with that screen pass that he punched in on that 4th down. Elijah Lofton had a few first downs in that drive that really set up that whole sequence. But yeah, let's get into the pass catchers now. And specifically, let's talk about baby Jesus, Malachi Tony, and CJ Daniels. Starting off with Malachi Tony, who had 7 receptions, 107 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the night. Probably the best wide receiver performance out of any player in the country that week. And if he wasn't already in the national spotlight from the Notre Dame game, oh, he's on the scene now. This guy is on the next level. Should have had 3 touchdowns, like you mentioned before, if that wasn't for Keelan Marion's illegal motion play, which really had nothing to do with the touchdown. But what I loved about this game was that his mom was super into it. You saw the tweet after the game calling it Malahassee, and that is something that will be coined, and that will forever be known as Malahassee for as long as Malachi Tony is wearing the orange and green before he inevitably goes to the NFL, let's be honest. Just also what I loved about this play today, if you go beyond the stats, right? He's such a scrappy, domineering blocker. He's so willing to get down and dirty there. That is something that is so mature from him. That is not something that you see from a lot of these diva wide receivers nowadays. And the fact that he was able to do that, it helps so much with other aspects of the game as well.
And he's not a big guy. I mean, he's listed at 5'11", really an undersized receiver. At that 5'11", 188 is his official weight coming into the season. So he's a true slot guy. But you know what? Sometimes you get those guys, those slot receivers that are willing to go get scrappy and get down in the trenches and make blocks. And to his credit, there's that Keelan Marion end around it's in the second quarter where Malachi picks up a big-time block right in front of him. Keelan rips that off for a 15, 20-yard gain. It's little things like that, and then also just his ability to, when a defense knows that a guy like that can block and can, get a guy in front of him in those situations, those just chip plays where you can go out, you can sign him a block, and then he can chip off on a late breaking, broken play route and get open. It's one of those things that just makes him such a versatile receiver, and it's one of the things that's really going to help him out as a player this year and in the future. I mean, it's like a Xavier Restrepo 2.0, but better, faster, stronger, better hands. I don't want to go too early into it. He's only played 5 games. But I mean, for the impact this kid has made in his first 5 games in the green and orange, it's incredible. You want to talk about Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams from last year? This is up there. This can be better than that.
It is not ridiculous to have those conversations at all. I think at this point, he may have solidified himself as a true freshman All-American. Barring any injury or anything ridiculous happening, this kid is already up at that level. And talk about dual threat. Not a lot of people know this, but he actually played quarterback in high school for a brief stint of time. He was actually under Diabell, who he played with at American Heritage. Diabell, who is one of the top quarterback prospects in the nation. He's going to Texas next year.
Yeah.
He went down with an injury in their playoffs, and he actually stepped up at QB, played the final 3 games of the playoffs, and in his time there, 36 for 45, 80% completion percentage, 510 yards, 7 touchdowns to 1 interception, and he rushed for another 191 yards and 3 touchdowns. This guy, I mean, he can really do it all, and that's what I love about it. He is willing to just plug and play himself anywhere he wants, and he's so talented that he can get it done at any position.
And it's crazy that he was a consensus 3-star coming out of high school. This guy was not a highly recruited player at all. I mean, he had offers from Power 5 school, Power 4 schools, but it wasn't like everybody was coming after this kid, not like some of these other prospects that you've seen going out in the draft. I mean, this kid just fell into Miami's laps. It's that whole idea of the state of Miami that this Hurricanes program has been, known to make, getting kids from Dade and Broward and Palm Beach counties and keeping them local. Mally's the perfect example of that. It's the type of kid you want under a Cristobal and Shannon Dawson system. It's where he can flourish. I mean, I'm just excited to see how they use him the rest of the season now through ACC play and everything because, man, I don't think there's a lot of DBs in the country that can cover this kid.
And when he's paired in that tandem with CJ Daniels, who had 5 receptions for 78 yards and another 2 touchdowns, it's a pair that so far is yet to be seen being stopped. Because these guys, when one person goes on, the other person is also on their A game. And we have not seen a secondary that has had an answer yet. CJ Daniels, by the way, can we talk about that celebration, that war chant? That might go down as one of the most disrespectful but most iconic Miami touchdown celebrations of all time. I mean, I think it's up there with the Cam Ward celly. And also, I think it's probably the best, most swagger-like celebration we've seen since Randall Hill did the Guns against Texas all that time ago.
And, I couldn't really see that he did that until after the game because the service was so bad in Tallahassee that I saw Twitter, I saw the feed after the game of him doing that, and it was cool to see. Then sometimes you got that competitive juice to you, and it was pretty funny.
How was that, by the way? So you were in the press box. You couldn't show any emotion.
Me and Luca were in the stand.
Okay, thank God. Okay.
Yeah. It was loud there. Credit to FSU. It was a great atmosphere, and it was a fun time.
It was a good time. That was my second time up in Tally. I went 2 years ago for the game up there when Emory Williams broke his arm on the scramble, trying to lead that game tying drive, and then Van Dyke threw the pick. But I mean, they're loud at the start of that game when the war chant's going on. But I give the Canes credit in what they did. They completely took the air out of that building super quick. They go out. FSU gets a big first drive. They get the field goal, score 3. They get a stop, and now they're getting the ball back, and you think, oh God, here it comes. All hell's gonna break loose, and then Miami's defense just shows up. You know what I mean? You force turnover, 3 turnovers on the night. They get QB pressure the whole time. Florida State probably got away with 5 or 6 non-holding calls.
Heinous.
And some of them were bad. I mean, Ruben Bain was getting hooked a lot. But regardless, Miami did their job. And they took the air out of that building. And by midway through the third quarter, fans were emptying out of the seats because it was just total domination until Florida State was able to find their rhythm and come back in that fourth quarter.
Miami's defense was stellar. They sold out to stop the run. Both teams actually did. They're both successful, but Miami stopped the run, held Florida State to 3.5 yards per rush after averaging 6.7 yards per carry the entire season before that. And they really just had Gus Malzahn twisted in a pretzel with the schemes. They were patient. They spent 2 weeks of planning leading up to this game to really get ready for all that trickery and nuances that Malzahn brought to this offense, and they were ready. You could just see in all the plays, like you said, Ruben Bain, once again, so massive for this team, had 11 pressures, more than the entire FSU defense combined. There's actually one incredible video where, Castellanos was scrambling. He went to his right side, and then he pivoted, turned to his left, and you just saw Ruben Bain just standing there, just trapping him, just this huge guy. It was like a Scooby-Doo scene. It was awesome. And just absolutely stellar performances, but I really want to highlight not only, obviously, Bain and Messer, which we'll get to, our weekly appreciation, our praise for them. We'll get to that. But let's talk about the secondary because that was one of the biggest question marks going into this game. We knew that they were going to be the unit that was probably going to be tested for once. They have not really been tested a lot going into this game. And they stepped up to bat, and they went all out. Great performances from individual players like Jacoby Thomas and Keontae Scott. What do you guys think?
I mean, Keontae Scott, let's take a look at the stat line. 11 tackles, 5 solo tackles, and half tackle for loss. He's been great, and another guy that's been improving every week and getting that recognition out there, and fans are finally starting to learn his name. And Zachariah Poyser as well came in big there.
You know what? I like to take a look at the way the defense played last year, under Lance Guidry and what they were able to do right and wrong. And one of the big things for me and analyzing that team from last year compared to this year's Heatherman's defense this year is that last year there wasn't that trust in the safeties. I'm going to specify in the safeties. So, this year, you got Jacoby Thomas out there. You got Zachariah Poyser. These are elite-level guys. Poyser and Thomas were probably the 2 best safeties available in the portal this year at that position, and they both come to Miami. And when you have a lot of confidence in those guys in your deep secondary, you're not afraid to move out of those cover 2 and cover 4 packages. You can trust to send one of them in on a blitz. Look at Jacoby Thomas this week. He had a sack in there. He had a couple of TFLs, and he gets the interception on the late on when Castellanos tries to throw that bomb. But why is he able to do that? Because they know they can trust Zechariah Poyser back there to play in cover 3 and be a single high safety, and they can trust those corners. Look at Bryce Fitzgerald, true freshman with 3 picks on the year. Look at the way that some of these other OJ Frederick has really come along as a sophomore, and he's balling out. Even Damari Brown, when he comes into the game, is a very solid cover corner. What happened with this Miami team last year, they didn't have that trust in their secondary. Their corners would get beat too often. They didn't have a safety back there that they could really trust, since Cam Kitchens, when that's 2 years ago already. So, I mean, it's just the amount of talent they have back there completely changes the way a defense can scheme itself. And then when you got guys like Bain and Mesidor can get to the quarterback quick, it's just the perfect storm. This is one of the strongest, if not the strongest, defensive unit in the country, hands down.
Yeah, shout out to Corey Heatherman for getting this defense right. And,
oh yeah.
You mentioned Jacoby Thomas. He almost attempted to do the Ray Lewis celebration again, but he kind of, when he planted his foot out, he kind of did the shirt emoji or whatever, and it kind of just stopped. He's like, because he wasn't gonna do it again.
He did it 2 weeks ago against
Yeah,
Florida.
he did.
But I guess he didn't want to do it again for this time.
What a steal from University of Tennessee, a program where he'd probably be starting there as well, let's be honest. Jacoby Thomas, player of the game, had a 92 PFF grade, which is higher than Ruben Bain. And Ruben Bain, also, again, incredible. He actually probably still would have been the highest rated player if it wasn't for a couple penalties. And besides the penalties, he still managed to grab a PFF grade over 90 overall. And you speak about Cam Kitchens, right? Bryce Fitzgerald, another true freshman that's making plays, this time on the defensive side of the ball. This guy was being compared to Cam Kitchens actually in spring camp, and that is just such high praise coming from this coaching staff because Kitchens, he was so pivotal for this team in the secondary. He was the team captain, earned first-team All-ACC honors, and he was a finalist for the Thorpe Award even. So the fact that you have such a young, budding prospect in Bryce Fitzgerald, and he's already drawing these parallels to guys that were so elite, that just spells some great things to come for this team. There's so much depth there, like you mentioned. Another player, Dylan Day even, had that tone-setting tackle, which was called for targeting. I think that's kind of ticky-tacky by the refs there because he kind of turtled up there, that Florida State guy. But nevertheless, it set that tone of the Miami, the U swagger, and it was just so pivotal. And now I think we should get into Bain and Mesidor specifically because every game you have to talk about him because every game they play and they pay such dividends to this team on terms of defense.
Every week, Bain and Mesidor. Mesidor had a big tackle. I forgot which quarter it was, but I think he might have sacked or tackled Tommy Castellanos at some point.
He had a big sack when they were backed up in their own territory, deep in their own territory, and he took them down around the 2. I mean, Akeem Mesidor is just what a breakout year. And I mean, he had a great year last year, and everybody kind of knew all right, this guy's good. He's got it. But this year, he's just been on a different level. And 5 tackles, an assisted tackle, and the sack. He does everything right. That's the thing you got to love about him. And then Ruben Bain, in a game where, you look at the stat sheet, and you're not going to say, oh, wow, Ruben Bain with 2 sacks, or Ruben Bain with, the best game of his career. Because he didn't have the best game of his career. In fact, stat-wise, he had probably the worst game of his season. But you would never tell that if you watched the game, because he's just disrupting. He disrupts the play. He's able to make plays in run D. He's able to get to the quarterback hard. And you know what? He kind of forces those bad throws. That first pick that Castellanos threw to Bryce Fitzgerald is all because Mesidor and Bain both win. And he has to force a ball up as he's getting brought down, and it gets picked off. So it's the little things like that that really don't come up on the score sheet. That's going to come up when you watch film in the weeks to come. And I'm sure Louisville's going to have to find a way to scheme around that.
And Bain and Mesidor are number 2 and number 3, respectively, in pressures in the entire country, only behind David Bailey of Texas Tech. But yeah, these guys, Ruben Bain, he currently has a 96.2 grade on the season, which is better than Chase Young and Aiden Hutchinson had in their seasons, and they were finalists for the Heisman. So I don't want to sound the alarm yet about Heisman because I know it's probably not going to happen. He's a defensive player. He probably needs more sacks on his resume for him to be considered, but still, the term game wrecker is kind of tossed around nowadays, but he really, truly is the epitome of that, and that just needs to go more noticed. And by the way, the fact that he plays with that Chrome Hearts mouth guard, that really helps his case, I'd say, for sure.
Kind of shifting to more so the negatives of what happened in the game. It was 28-3 in the fourth quarter, and then at the end score was 20-22. You give up 19 points in the fourth quarter. That's not a great look. It was a long fourth quarter. It was about an hour. At that point, you're up fans' spirits are high, even the players, and you kind of just want to get out of there, play clean, hard football, and that wasn't the case.
Yeah, I mean, on offense, you amass just 17 yards. You go 0 for 5 on third and fourth downs. Then on defense, you give up 19 unanswered. Let them march down the field, put up 188 yards on you in one fourth quarter alone. It's not a great look. It's a blemish, I think, on the coaching staff after what would have been a near perfect game. And I think the blame really is going to fall on, in this case, probably Coach Cristobal, just the fact that he played a little too conservative. He always knew that he was controlling the game, but there are times when you can't just coast like that, and you're letting teams back in. It gives them momentum, and at one point, if you keep doing that, you're probably going to lose. It may not be to Stanford. It may not be to teams like Virginia Tech down the road, but
You got good teams coming up.
yeah, you do. And you don't want to build bad habits going into playoffs, which I think now is the expectation for this Miami team.
Yeah, and I mean, you know what? I get it. Fourth quarter, you're up, 3-4 possessions, and you're going to say, all right, let's just run the ball, let's wind the clock, let's get this game over with. But you didn't run well the whole game so far. And then you not only did you not run the ball well, you took the ball out of Fletcher's hands. And you tried to get cute and get Jordan Lyle touches, which I get. The kid hasn't played in a few weeks. You're trying to put him back in. But Jordan Lyle's not a guy that's going to run between the tackles. Well, he runs outside the tackles. He runs outside the numbers. And they weren't able to do that at all this week. And then again, you know what? You were winning. You weren't even winning on deep shots. You were winning on screen passes and design rubs and these short, easy 10-yard gains. So when you get to second and long or third and medium or anything like that, you got to trust your guys. You got to trust Carson Beck. You got to trust Malachi Tony, CJ Daniels to go make a play and get you a first down. I just think they took the ball out of the air a little too much, and that's what cost them. And, 2 or 3 drives where you go 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. Now you're all of a sudden, and that last 15 minutes of game clock, your defense is on the field for 12 and a half of those minutes. It's just something that, good teams know how to avoid, or good teams try to avoid, and great teams are able to avoid.
I just didn't see any really creativity from Shannon Dawson, especially when FSU had been stacking the box the entire game. Mark Fletcher, like you said, is known for kind of turning the hash marks, getting outside. They didn't do any of that. They won onside kicks in FSU's own half, and they didn't do anything. They went 3 and out every time that happened. And it just, you have the playmakers to go out and make plays, and you decide not to do that. You decide to manage clock with still 10 minutes left in the game, and that's just going to lead to opportunities for the other team going the other way. And that's what you saw. But however, now saying that, I will give credit to the secondary because they let everything happen in front of them. They didn't let any explosive plays happen behind them. And FSU, despite them scoring 2 touchdowns there back-to-back, you're not going to get a comeback going if you take a 19-play drive that eats up over 5 minutes of clock. So that's what the secondary did. They limited them to having these short gains, having Deuce Robinson do these out routes on the corner, get out of bounds for only short yardage. And they kind of limited their overall abilities to go and stretch the field, which I think helped overall, making them eat more clock than they wanted to, which eventually led to them not having enough time at the end.
Yeah, and also another thing that bothered this team, or what happened, was the penalties. I think, a lot of them were maybe shouldn't have been called by the refs. I just think that we got a little, I don't know the right word for it, but the penalties could have been cleaned up a bit more regardless.
Yeah, it gets more egregious each week, doesn't it? I mean, against USF, it was 9 penalties for 69 free yards. For Florida, you lost the penalty battle there. It gave up 6 compared to Florida's 3. And then in this game, all-time worst, 13 penalties for 114 yards. Yeah. That's despicable. That's deplorable. That's not something that you want. That's kind of reminiscent of what it was like, once again, referring back to that Texas game all that time ago. They won that game like they won here, but it's just not a great look for the whole team.
No, it's not. It's not something you want to see. And then again, it's just some of these just, they're not penalties with, technique or anything like that, but they're just dumb penalties. They're jumping off sides when, it's quiet in that state. It was quiet. Every time Florida State got the ball, you could hear a pin drop in there, and you're jumping at hard counts. Or, the Dylan Day targeting, I get it. It was, you know what I mean? Was it targeting? Was it not targeting? We could sit here all day and debate it. But at the end of the day, it's a hit where if it's a clean hit, we don't care. Who cares? It's a great hit. But helmet hit helmet, they call it targeting. It's 15 free yards, and all of a sudden, Florida State's getting the ball at their own 40. You get the phantom unnecessary roughness on Castellanos sliding down, and they said he hit him. I didn't see anything there, but we can debate that all we want. But you know what I mean? That's 15 free yards every time you take a personal foul, and it happens. But it's just one of those things you got to clean up when you're going to face good teams coming up. Louisville coming in now in the next, not this week with the bye, but next week coming up ahead, is a good team. who just played Virginia very tough. And Virginia's a good team. We know Virginia's a good team. They're ranked now. They're in the top 20. And Louisville probably would have been ranked if they won that game. So you gotta take them seriously. You gotta play them like you played Florida, like you played Florida State, like you played USF. It doesn't get easy. The ACC is a good conference, and you're gonna have to win games. That's one of the things you gotta clean up for it.
And Louisville also was a great rusher on the defensive side of the ball, and A.J. Green, who is one of the nation's leaders in pressures as well, so you got to watch out for him. But I know it seems like we're being harsh, but I don't think we are. I think we're just setting this championship standard. Some people say, hey, you're getting greedy now. You came into the season expecting 10-2. Now I think the expectation is 12-0. Maybe that sounds ludicrous. Maybe, okay, they might drop one on the road because that's what happens in ACC play against like a Pat Narduzzi team or something like that. But I think at this point, you have to, from what we've seen at the level that Miami can attain, you have to expect near perfection and a pristine record.
At some point, you got to be a little greedy.
Yeah.
Right? At some point, you got to say, we're 5-0 now with 3 ranked wins. Nobody's beaten more ranked teams in the nation this year. Your offense is good. Your defense is really good. Why can't you win 12 games? You know what I mean? The ACC's weaker than it's been in a long time, and you're as strong as you've been, some people are saying, since 2001. So if this is a team that you don't think can go 12-0, I don't know what is a team that you think can go 12-0, because I'm putting these guys up there with the Oregons, the Ohio States of the world. I think this is, if it's not the best team in the country right now, it's really, really, really got a shot to be.
They're ranked number 2 in the country for a reason, and with the schedule coming up, yes, you could say there's some trap games, whatever, but this team hypothetically should win all 12 games, but I don't want to be too cocky about it, because God knows what could happen. And I think you've seen it last year where what happened at the end of the season especially against Syracuse. You can't have that happen late in the season to like Virginia Tech or Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Who that's going to be. The Hurricanes are playing in a cold weather atmosphere. They haven't played in a cold weather atmosphere, to that point. So it might throw them off. But that's a story for 5 weeks from now. And Miami has to focus on the present. And that's Louisville on the 17th.
Yeah, and the way I see it, this season is split into 2 halves, and I feel that even though technically we're not done with the first half of the season, I believe we are. I believe now that first half was all about testing the quality of this team. Where are we at as a whole program? And I believe we passed that test with flying colors. Now it's all about our team's mental resilience. All right, can we push ourselves to make sure that we stay disciplined throughout each game, even against those trap games like Stanford, where we think it's a throwaway? Can you not build those bad habits that could cost you? Maybe not in that game, but later on in the season when you play Oregon's and Ohio State's. That's what's going to be key. I mean, J.D. Pickell, a very big personality in college football for On3, he had a great quote. He said, it's hard to get up and work out when you're sleeping in silk sheets. And Miami now has a nice thread count. So make sure that we can solidify this crystal ball. It's all going to be about him now. How can he get this team to get up every day and give it their all 100%?
Yeah, I mean, look, you have 8 home games this season, 4 away games. And this was the line where I was drawing, where in all of my preseason predictions, I was saying, all right, by this point in the season, they're going to be 3-2. That's what a lot of us thought. We thought they were either going to drop 1 to Notre Dame or Florida. One of those would probably be a loss. And a lot of people were chalking up that Florida State game to be a possible loss. Even with Florida State coming up to 2-10 year last year, all that gets thrown away. It's a rivalry game. This team has shown that they can beat anybody. They're 5-0. They've won 4 games at home. They've won that game on the road, which I think was the most important thing. They dropped their 2 games they lost last year were both on the road, and they're able to go up the tally and win there for the first time in what feels like forever. It's just one of those things that, now looking forward, you get 4 more home games, you got 3 more road games, but you're playing good teams. You got to go week by week. Louisville's a good team. SMU's a good team. You know what I mean? Virginia Tech, although it doesn't look like they're that great on the paper, they play tough every week. Mm-hmm. Pitt is a good team, and that's one of the hardest places, in my opinion, to go in the ACC. Acrisure Stadium is formerly Heinz Field, is an absolute just gauntlet to go into.
Their game against Florida State this weekend will be great to watch. A great barometer to say for how well this team will play. Desmond Reed, fantastic guy on punt returns and special teams. Will probably be an All-American by the end of the season, so that's definitely an impact player that you have to watch out for. But now I think we should get into some recent news before we head into our midseason grades, which is the fact that Miami has now dropped their non-conference series with South Carolina starting next season. What do you guys think about that? Because it does have some massive implications on how I think future playoffs will be graded and how future teams will get in.
Yeah, I mean, I knew some people that were excited to go up to Bryant-Denny Stadium at South Carolina, and I think we talked about the 9-game format a little bit last week, and especially for being in the ACC, I'm not a big fan of it because I'd like to see Miami obviously play South Carolina, play an SEC school, whatever SEC team, because that's where the competition is in the SEC, even in the Big Ten as well, and that's going to be minimized due to this format.
I believe the AP voters now have to use a different type of measuring stick in terms of who they're voting in because they can't go off of resumes anymore. They just simply can't. It would be completely unfair if you're taking away games like South Carolina, where that would be a great non-conference matchup that could really test the waters and show you where this team lies. Now, if you're just forced to playing 9 conference games, that's for the SEC and for the ACC, that benefits the SEC way more it's objectively a fact that is a harder conference than the ACC at this present moment. So you're just rewarding those teams if you don't use different metrics. So something has to change now because we're seeing change at this aspect. Now the voting aspect of it has to change.
Yeah, and I mean now you look at Miami's non-con schedule for next year without South Carolina in there. You get Florida A&M at home, which is a throwaway game. Everybody's going to play one of those. Central Michigan at home, so you're getting a MAC school coming down to play. And then you're going to Notre Dame at the end of the year, which is going to be a tough game, and I'm sure the AP is going to give you a lot of credit if you're able to go up to South Bend and get a win. But, that game against South Carolina, that's one you circle. It's early in the season. If you can win that game, coming off the year that you're looking like you're going to have this year, that's an important game. And I think that now with this new, especially looking at the SEC and the ACC and the 9-game conference season, it's a tough place to put it. Miami's not going to play Florida again for maybe ever because Florida and Florida State have that deal through state legislation that they got to play each other every year. And that's not going to go anywhere. Those are 2 public universities that every year they're going to be forced to play each other, and there's nothing you can do about it. Florida's not going to want to play another tough conference game when they only got to play 2 other non-con games. They're going to want to play 2 dogs. You know what I mean? And so I think it's just going to be one of those things where Miami's going to have to try to find Power 4 teams that are going to want to try and play those games. And I don't know if you're going to find an SEC team, at least a powerhouse SEC team, to do that with. I know, there's some options out there. Maybe an Ole Miss or Mississippi State might want to do it. Maybe you look toward the Big 12 and see something like that. Maybe you can get a team from over there. But again, it's kind of a shame because that would have been a really fun game. Mm-hmm. 2 teams where, they're going to lose their quarterbacks after this year, presumably. They're going to be brand new offenses, brand new teams. That would have been really, really fun. Probably a ranked matchup up at Bryant-Denny, but we'll see what happens with the non-con schedules.
Excellently put. And so let's now get into our position grades. I think we should start with the offense, and I think there's no better place to start than with the quarterback position. I'll go first, and I'm giving Carson Beck. Maybe this is too generous, but a lot of things have been going right for this team this whole season, and I'm giving Carson Beck an A because he has been the spark plug behind it all. 5 for 5. That's the most important stat you got to look at. 5 for 5, because that's the most important quarterback stat that there is. He's undefeated. He has willed this team to 0 losses on the season, and that is the most important statistic that you can look at because he is a leader. It is not just the stats that he has, which are, by the way, mind-blowing. They are really good.
Yeah.
But it's also the intangible factors, his composure, his poise in big moments. We saw that in this quarterback, unlike any other quarterback we've seen so far, considering that Miami does have the best resume, did it against Notre Dame, did it against Florida, did it against a ranked USF team, and now did it in a hostile Doak atmosphere. The poise is there, and the leadership is there, and he is second in the Heisman odds as we speak, or maybe even first, depending on which side you look at. I think it's an A, and I don't think there's really much question about it.
I'm going to agree with you. A is flat out right. Besides that, 1 game against Florida, 260 yards. Other than that, 241 yards against, FSU, and over 200 yards against every opponent. He's been great. He's thrown for a 74% completion rating. Overall this season, 11 passing touchdowns. It's an A for me.
Yeah, it's got to be an A. I mean, he's got an 84.4 QBR. It's 10th in the country. He's thrown for 1,200 yards already through 5 games. 11 touchdowns to just 3 picks. I mean, and out of those 3 interceptions, 2 of them are ones that came off other guys' hands and got picked off. Not his fault. It happens. So, you know what I mean? This is just a guy who, you're 5-0 in the ACC and with arguably one of the best non-con schedules in the country. You beat Notre Dame, who came at the Hard Rock. He beat them. And didn't beat them. Beat them. Like, that was a great game from him in his first start in the green and orange. He didn't play his best against Florida, but again, what's the most important stat? He won the game. And then you walk up the tally, and you go 20 of 27 for 241 yards and 4 touchdowns. What else do you want from the guy?
Enough said.
That's it. There's a reason he's number 2 in Heisman odds. There's a reason he's, making a name for himself in NFL draft conversation. This kid, it's got to be.
Now we're gonna go to our tight ends right now. Let's go to Liam first. What do you got for us?
Okay, so this is one of my lowest grades out of all the position groups, but it's
fair.
more just so because of how great everyone else has been, and the tight ends we just have not seen a lot of so far. So I'm giving them a C+ for that reason. Maybe a bit harsh, but we just haven't really seen much involvement across the board. Elijah Lofton on the season, only 11 receptions for 100 yards. Alex Bauman, the second guy there, 5 receptions for 30 yards. However, I will say that they have been impactful in the blocking game, and they have been making differences, maybe just not in the box score. But these guys, especially Lofton, who have come into the season with so much in their tool set, and Lofton particularly, who is being compared to Elijah Arroyo, people even saying he had more of a higher ceiling than that guy, who is now in the NFL, one of the top tight ends for the Seahawks. He has just not been, I feel like, used or utilized in the correct way. I feel like he could be dumped to on more checkdowns a lot more often. He could be on short yardage plays, just passed to and thrown to a lot more for more targets. And I think that because of that, I'm giving it a C+. Not really because of their overall production, but because, or rather not because of their talent, but because of just the lack of their production.
I'm gonna go with the C. I think C+. Good grade. I just haven't seen too much this season from the tight ends, but there is room for improvement. There's room for to be better. I think we've seen that last week against FSU this past Saturday. They had more production. I think that's something maybe you'll see as conference play goes on. And by the end of the season, I believe their grade's going to be higher, at least in my opinion.
I'm going to agree with Zach. I'm going to go with a C. I think there's been flashes. I think that, Elijah Lofton's averaging 9.1 yards per reception, which is a good number. But then again, he only has 11 receptions on the season for 100 yards. I think there's a lot of opportunity in these 2 tight end sets for Bauman and Lofton to really just play dummy kind of, and one of them can rub off a linebacker and the other one can get open, and it just hasn't been used a lot. I'm very pro, chipping with the tight end and then get him out in cover or getting them out in space, but we really haven't seen that a lot, and it's not their fault. It's just the way that the cards have been dealt so far. So I'm gonna go with a C. But the one redeeming quality, I will say, they have been fantastic in run blocking.
Yes.
Fantastic. I mean, they pick up everything, which is something that you can't say for a lot of tight ends these days.
Another group that's been fantastic in the blocking is the wide receivers. I'm giving them an A-, just short of an A+, because they bailed us out against Notre Dame and FSU, but they weren't as potent against Florida. But, hey, then again, they didn't really need to be. But I would like to see more involvement, if this is just a minor critique, more involvement across the board from guys besides C.J. Daniels and Malachi Toney. We saw it was more of a 3-headed monster last season with Jacoby George, Horton, and Restrepo. This time it's only really 2 guys, and they're putting up similar numbers, however. And, hey, I mean, even though it's been only the 2 of them, no one so far has been able to stop both of them simultaneously. So if they're getting going, there's really nothing you can do about it. Maybe, but I would like to see more from Josh Moore, and JoJo Trader is finally, hopefully, starting to be
supposedly healthy.
Supposedly, yeah, he was. Once again, didn't really see anything last game, but
question mark as the season unfolds. Haven't got a straight answer from coach yet.
What's your grade for the wide receivers?
I'll go A- as well. Malachi Toney, 375 receiving yards through 5 games. That's 100 more than C.J. Daniels. He's just been a stud, and the both of them combined. You said the 3-headed monster this year. Now we have 2 great receivers. But I think you'll see flashes from Josh Moore, Tony Johnson, N'Keal Marion getting involved. Josh Moore was great, I believe, against that South Florida game.
Yeah, he had a 2-touchdown game, monster performance.
We'll see where he goes in this offense.
I'm going to shock it. I'm going to go A+. And here's my reasoning. Last year, that receiving core was hard to top. Sam Brown, Xavier Restrepo, Jacoby George, Elijah Arroyo. I mean, you could just could throw the ball anywhere, and he had a guy that was going to make a play. Going into this year, that was the biggest question mark, I thought, on the team. Yes, of course, the quarterback. You lose Cam, whatever, but you bring in Carson Beck. You know Carson Beck's going to be a solid quarterback. He was great at Georgia. But you're telling me you bring in this kid, C.J. Daniels, who hasn't played a full season in 2 years since he was at Liberty, ended up getting hurt last year at LSU. Malachi Toney, who's a 17-year-old true freshman who you have no idea what he's going to do because he spent the last 4 games of his high school career playing quarterback. You know what I mean? Keelan Marion, who was really only a return specialist at BYU, really didn't play outside a lot. Brand new tight end in Alex Bauman. Elijah Lofton, who played minimal time last year behind McCormick and Arroyo. There was a lot of question marks here. JoJo Trader, who redshirted. Josh Moore was a true freshman. And they throw the ball, man. Like, these guys have been phenomenal. And for one of the positions where you thought that they were going to struggle, and that was the biggest question mark, they have not missed a step. Carson Beck looks like he's got a guy open on every down. It's incredible what they've been able to do. I got to go A+. I think this is one of the most underappreciated receiving corps in the country.
And that was what was so remarkable about Saturday night, was that the two position groups that had the most asterisks around their name going into it, the wide receivers, and then, of course, the secondary, they were the ones that stepped up in the biggest way to really lead this team to a win, I feel like. And now with the running backs, a team that maybe took a step back compared to previous weeks, I'm giving them an A- because it would have been an A+, no doubt in my mind, had it not been for this game where they kind of wilted a little bit under the pressure. Mark Fletcher, 12 carries for 40 yards, averaging 3.3 yards per carry. Marty Brown, slightly worse, in my opinion, though he was better in the short yardage situations.
Yep.
Only had 2.4 yards per carry and 8 carries for 19 yards. However, besides this game, all season, they've been carrying this offense on their backs almost. They've been such great safety valves for Carson Beck when it wasn't his day against Florida, per se. They really led this team and led the way. Marty Brown, what a transfer this guy has been from North Dakota State. Picking up right where he left off in the FCS. Nothing much more you could ask from the guy. And he's really stepped into that role where he may be even exceeding Jordan Lyle as the second number 2 back.
Yeah, I'm going to give them an A. I think that the running game, all right, they finally had that little bit of a fall-off game against Florida State, but it happens. They've established the run so well. I mean, Fletcher and Brown ran for over 40 touches and 196 yards against Florida combined. That's crazy. That's crazy stats. Fletcher is one of the best running backs in the country, in my opinion. Marty Brown won the Jerry Rice Award last year at NDSU, was their first 1,000-yard rusher in 13 years. He's a monster transfer. When you can run the ball, it makes everything so much easier. This is a team where you can trust. You have 3 guys that you can trust to run the ball. There's no problems there. They're a great unit.
We're talking about one bad game against FSU. I'm going to give them an A. Same with Luca. And you guys pretty much said everything already. But Carson Beck last week or 2 weeks ago against however long that was. He didn't have a great game, and the running back stepped up. When you can have a room full of backs that could take over when the passing game's not going, that's important, especially when you're going to play these hard teams. You know, hopefully if Miami makes this college football playoff.
And then with the offensive line, A+, but the backbone of the entire team, just a whole line of dogs. You got Francis Malinoa, Ryan Rodriguez, James Brockermeyer, Inez Cooper, Markel Bell. The list goes on and on and on. There's so much depth there, and there really just should not be much to be said about it because they have just been dominant. They went into the season projected to be dominant, and they've even surpassed those expectations. There's not much to be said about this.
It's an A+ unit. It's probably the best unit in the country. And, I mean, guy goes down, they bring someone else in. Samson Okunlola comes in, and you don't lose anything. It's the same result. This team is just – this offensive line is just deep, man. That's all it is. It's just deep. You can't give them anything else but an A+. They are the best unit in the country.
Well, Luca, I'm going to give them an A. Now, hear me out, Luca.
I don't think you can do that.
Hear me out.
Diabolical.
I don't know.
There's always room for improvement, and they're great. But if they could be –
they don't give up pressure.
20% pressure rate was the worst all season.
I'm not a big fan of giving out A+ until maybe the end of the season.
I am when 20% pressure is their worst pressure rate in a game.
Zach, I would not want you as my teacher. You don't give out A+.
Say that again?
You're like that nobody's perfect teacher that just never gives out A+. Is that what you are?
No. I'm no. And maybe now you're convincing me to give A+. No, but I'm gonna stay with an A here. They've been fantastic all year. Like you mentioned earlier, Liam. Carson Beck has so much time to throw the football. He's getting it out fast because he has time. Because he's just been a very talented quarterback.
And then switching over to the defense now, I'm giving the defensive line valedictorian. Because I'm actually going to, this may be a little controversial, but I'm saying that they're not only an A+, they've gone above that, and they are the best unit on this entire football team.
I'll agree with you.
I'm saying that they're better than the offensive line, even.
Hands down.
Because it's not only that, but the expectations they had were also high, but they just are leaps above what they were thought they're going to be going into the season. Ruben Bain, people thought, okay, hey, this guy could be dangerous. He's been so much more than that. He has now climbed to the top of draft boards. Many prospects are now having him as the number one guy. Akeem Messidor, incredible as captain. And once again, Wesley Bissainth. This team, in this unit, in my opinion, is even better than this offensive line.
Oh, yeah.
And it's iron sharpens iron. It's this dynamic where they're practicing against one another every single day at Green Tree. And that's really what's helping this team win the line of scrimmage every single game.
I'm not even going to bother. You took the words right out of my mouth. This is an A-plus unit. This is the best unit in the country, in my opinion. Nobody creates pressure like them. Bain and Messidor are, second and third in pressure rate in the country this year. You don't got to say anything else. Just watch film.
Yeah.
Just watch film. They're the best unit in the country.
All right. I take back what I said about not giving A's. A+, excuse me. We're going to give an A+.
Yeah, you have to. You have to.
Yeah, you gotta.
Raymond Bain, Akeem Messidor. There's not much to say. They've been incredible.
And then with the secondary, I'm giving them a B+. And now, in my opinion, this is still a very good grade for the secondary because they are going into the season where we absolutely knew nothing about this at all.
I love it.
And they were shaky at times against Notre Dame. The fourth quarter of Florida State was a little bit so-and-so. But overall, they've been a net strength. And that is something that's all you could ask for as a Miami Hurricanes fan after the travesty that was last season with that just horrible Lance Guidry-guided team. I'm giving this a B+. I think that's very, very good.
Listen, you're going to get beat. It happens.
Yeah.
You're going to get beat in coverage. There's going to be blown coverage. It's going to happen. We saw Xavier Lucas get burnt against Notre Dame. It happens. It's a B+ unit. They're very solid. They force turnovers, which is something they had a problem with the last couple of years. And, they got these individual guys like Brice Fitzgerald with three takeaways on the year already. Jacoby Thomas has a couple. They're a great unit. They play hard. They swarm. They get to the ball quick. They're able to play in man. They're able to play in zone. You know what? You don't need to have the best secondary in the country if you have the best pass rush in the country. You know what I mean? You can disguise weaknesses in the secondary with a good pass rush. I'm not saying there is a lot of weaknesses in the secondary. I think that there's times where they do get burnt in man, and it happens. But it's gonna happen. You can't fault them for that. I want to see it a little bit cleaner, but B+, great unit. You got to give them the coaching staff a lot of credit for building up this unit in the portal because they've just made some great additions.
B+.
Hey everyone, Liam Hickey here. Just want to hop on real quick because unfortunately Zach, Luca, and myself ran into some technical issues while finishing up our discussion in the studio, and our recording abruptly ended before we were able to wrap up with our last two positional grades. So without further ado, just want to hop on here real briefly to go over the last marks we gave and give our closing remarks. So starting with the special teams group, we gave this overall a B. And if you split it into three areas, both have been pretty good for the most part. And this has been a really good strength for the Hurricanes. Starting with the kicking, it's been one of the biggest surprises. You look at Andy Borregales last season, graduating and going to the New England Patriots. He was phenomenal in 2024. And that left this outlook for the kicking room pretty ambiguous, considering that you had two guys competing for a spot in Carter Davis and Bert Auburn going into 2025. Bert Auburn was actually forecasted to be the number one guy before Carter Davis won that spot in spring camp. And since then, Carter Davis has just been electric in his role. He's been 100% from the field, made some crucial field goals against Notre Dame and Florida. And because he's been perfect on the season, you can't really give any of these kicking guys any marks off, really. And that's just been a great note for the Hurricanes. And now going into the second part of that, the punting. Dylan Joyce, near perfect as well. If it wasn't for last Saturday night against the Florida State Seminoles where he shanked that punt in the second quarter, ball landed around the 50-yard line, gave the Florida State some really good field position. If you just look beyond that, it's been really good from him. He has immense talent. We know he was named a two-freshman All-American in 2023, coming over from Australia. You love those Aussie guys. He's been really good for the overall team culture and chemistry. And I think that overall, because he had, maybe a little bit of a bad game for his standards against Florida State, that maybe knocks him down just a little bit. But besides that, it's also been really good thumbs-up play from him. And then finally, in terms of the punt returners and the kick returners, Keelan Marion and Malachi Tony have been the two guys in charge of those roles, and they both have been playing pretty well. Keelan Marion has had some big gains a couple of times already. He was brought into this team not only for his catching abilities as a wideout, but also for this special teams role coming over from BYU. And he has shown flashes. However, he has not broke open for a big gain in the backfield yet. He has not scored a touchdown, but he has shown that he can get there one day, and I think he will eventually do that by the end of the season. Malachi Tony almost made a crib call as well against the University of South Florida. He would have ran it all the way back if it wasn't for another player on the Miami Hurricanes running into him at the end there. So besides that, I'm giving them a B overall. No explosive touchdowns and nothing truly amazing, but overall really solid and nothing that has really cost this team, which is all that you can ask for your special teams. Once again, 100% on field goals and extra points. So, I mean, that's all that you really want. And then finishing off with coaching, which may be the most important grade, we gave this a B as well. Now listen, the off-the-field coaching has been great. Corey Heatherman, Shannon Dawson, Mario Cristobal, these guys know how to condition their players. They know how to set the tone in Green Tree. They know how to make sure these players are coming out and giving their A game going into every single week, every single time. And that's what's been perfect about this group. However, the in-game managing, especially with Coach Cristobal at the helm, has arguably been holding this team back, I think, from reaching that tier of being the clear-cut national contenders because they've been letting other teams back into the game because of it. If you take away the second and third quarter of Florida and you take away the fourth quarter of Florida State, every single game would be a blowout pretty much except for Notre Dame. And I think that would have propelled Miami to the number one spot. But instead, they let these teams hang around. Florida State, it came down to an onside kick that Miami recovered. But it really should never have been that close. And that's what I'm going to chalk up to Coach Cristobal being just a little bit too conservative, making some weird play calls here and there. We saw it also against the University of Florida where he punted in the Gators' territory. Sure, it gave them horrible field position, but still, you just want to see your coach being a little bit more spunky, a little bit more aggressive. And I will give them credit because we did see that in the first half of last Saturday night against Florida State where they went for it twice on fourth down. They converted both times. One of them, or actually both of them, eventually led to a touchdown. One of them was straight off of a fourth down conversion. That was, of course, the Malachi Tony route that he took from the screen and then ran all the way up, torching guys in his path. So I'm crediting Cristobal there with that uncharacteristic, aggressive decision-making that ended up being really, really beneficial for this team. And then Corey Heatherman and Shannon Dawson, just two absolute dogs. We talk about Corey Heatherman all the time. He's been the buzz on campus. ESV, excitement, swarm, and violence. It has not only been so evident in this defensive group, but that motto that has been ringing in the ears of these Miami players has permeated throughout all of the entire units. You see it in the wide receivers, Malachi Tony, laying in those blocks. You see it with these tight ends and Elijah Lofton as well, making waves in that run blocking game. Not exactly known for being great pass catchers, but Corey Heatherman has instilled this doctrine into his players, and it has been feeding off of everyone, and you just can feel the emotions. It is palpable in Hard Rock. It is palpable within this program, and it really spells some exciting things. Shannon Dawson, of course, continuing to do what he does best in developing guys. Carson Beck, once again, looking like another NFL caliber prospect after what he did with Cam Ward last season. Shannon Dawson just has a really good knack for listening to his players, almost being a player's coach in a sense, and really prepping his guys to be there at the next level. And I just got to say, guys, let's not take for granted these two coordinators. They've been A+ so far, and I think we just have to enjoy them while they last. So with that being said, that will cap off this week's episode of the TMH Sportscast. For myself and Zach Cohen, thank you all for watching. Rest up and enjoy the bye week before Miami dives into the meat and potatoes of ACC play. Starting next Friday, we know it's going to be nonstop Hurricanes action for 6 straight weeks, all the way up until the end of November. So unwind right now, grab a breather this weekend before we buckle in for the long haul. And with that being said, we will see you all next week. Thank you.